welcome to Eye on Africa, France 24's program focused on the continent. I'm Charlie James, and these are the headlines. Twin car bombs explode within moments of each other in Mogadishu, followed by gunfire and a third blast. At least 20 people have been killed in the attack. A former president alleges fraud in Madagascar's recent election, but EU observers say the abnormalities are marginal. We update you on the state of the 36th candidate race. And hundreds of thousands of African soldiers fought in World War I. Now, ahead of the 100-year anniversary of the end of fighting, the family of one Senegalese soldier tells his life story. The militant Islamist group al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for a deadly attack in Somalia's capital. Suicide attackers set off 2 car bombs at a popular hotel on Friday. Then, about 20 minutes later, there was a third explosion in a vehicle on a nearby street. Police say at least 20 people are dead. Laurent Bestoucher brings us the details.
Thick plumes of white smoke rising in the Mogadishu sky, just moments after 3 deadly blasts rocked the Somali capital. In front of the popular Sahafi Hotel and police headquarters where the explosions took place, ambulances were rushing to the scene to try to save as many lives as possible.
We have been rescuing the wounded first, those who are still alive. We took all the wounded and dead bodies to hospitals in Mogadishu.
2 car bombs exploded within moments of each other in the heart of the Somali capital Friday. They were followed by gunfire and by a third blast, apparently from a suicide bomber. Over a dozen people were killed and several more were rushed to hospital. Most of the victims were civilians. The al-Shabaab militant group, an al-Qaeda affiliate which still controls some territory in Somalia, despite being forced out of the capital 7 years ago, has claimed responsibility for the attack. It said it was targeting the Sahafi Hotel, where senior Somali government officials were staying. The attackers were apparently stopped from entering by security forces and had to detonate the bombs outside.
Vote counting continues in Madagascar following a high-stakes presidential election. President Hery Rajaonarimampianina, who is also a candidate, has alleged the vote was marred by fraud. But EU election observers said Friday there were only very minor irregularities. Here is Christian Preda, the EU's chief observer, speaking about the vote.
What we have seen in terms of difficulties were of a logistic matter. There were issues linked to the organization of the vote that have not impacted the credibility of the election. This is the most important conclusion.
Preda also recommended a campaign spending cap to level the playing field in the future. Despite being one of the poorest countries in the world, Madagascar's elections are among the most expensive. The 3 most recent presidents are currently the frontrunners in the first round of this election, and they also spent the most money. The top 2 are expected to face each other in a runoff next month. Let's take a quick look at some other top stories from across Africa. The United Nations Special Envoy to Libya says he expects elections to take place in the war-racked country in early 2019. Elections were to be held on December 10th, following an agreement by rival leaders at a Paris summit in May. But divisions along regional, tribal, and linguistic lines have complicated the country's transition to democracy. As DR Congo battles an outbreak of the Ebola virus, our militants are being called on to cooperate. The World Health Organization says the virus endangers everyone and improved security is needed to concentrate its efforts. More than 300 cases of Ebola and 191 deaths have been reported in the east of the country. 2 Algerian journalists accused of defamation, threats, and invasion of privacy were released Thursday night. After a team of 43 lawyers defended them, Abdou Samar and Merwan Boudiab were ordered to be let go, pending what the court called further information. The 2 work for the website Algérie Pot and are among the 5 journalists who have been jailed there in recent weeks. More than 30 human rights groups are appealing for the release of a Mauritanian blogger who has become a symbol of repression in the country. Mohamed Mohatir was charged with blasphemy and in 2014 sentenced to death. This over a blog post deemed to insult the Prophet Muhammad. He repented and the court overturned the ruling exactly 1 year ago, but he is still being held in an undisclosed location. Our team spoke to Francois Patieu of Amnesty International about the campaign.
According to Mauritanian authorities, Mohamed Mohatir is in administrative detention for his own security. He should have been freed 1 year ago, but he's still being held without access to his lawyers, with limited access to his family. He needs medical attention, yet Mauritania continues to insist that it's for his own safety. For Amnesty International and our 32 partner organizations, this is absurd and he should be freed immediately. He's been detained since January 2014 with long periods in solitary confinement. This obviously impacts his physical and mental health. He must be freed immediately and given medical treatment.
Sunday marks 100 years since the end of World War I, and while the fighting was on European soil, France enrolled some 600,000 troops from its colonies. One of those soldiers was Abdoulaye Ndiaye, a Senegalese rifleman who fought in some of the deadliest battles of the Great War. In this report, his family looks back on his very long life.
The town of Thiaroye, northern Senegal. It was in these humble surroundings that Senegal's last surviving World War I trooper lived out his final years. Abdoulaye Ndiaye fought for France from the beginning of the Great War.
He left for the front in 1914. He talked about his journey from Dakar, where they received very basic military training in the camp of Thiaroye. That's where they gave them basic training, for someone from the backcountry to become a soldier.
Abdoulaye was just 20 years old when he was sent to the battles of the Somme and Verdun. While fighting at the Somme, he received a serious head wound, which continued to cause him pain years later. At the end of the war, he returned to Senegal with a modest pension and a French railway pass, which he was never to use.
What I know is that he was honored to have accomplished something. I mean, taking part in military combat with all the perils of war, the threat of death. To have done it for France, but also to have done it to bring honor to his father and his brothers.
Abdoulaye lived to the age of 104, passing away in 1998, just 1 day before he was due to be presented with the Legion of Honor. He received the award posthumously.
All that he earned, he shared. That's why he did not leave much behind. When he received his pension, he would share it with others on the very same morning.
As a last wish, he requested that France do something to improve his village. This French-funded road, known as Sharpshooter's Path, was opened in 2002. Today, Abdoulaye's family just want to ensure that this legacy is maintained.
And finally, France's first and only art fair dedicated to contemporary African art and design opened Friday. Called Also Known as Africa, thousands of visitors are expected to view the original, vibrant, and bold creations being showcased. This is just the third year of the Young Fair, and some of the artists taking part say it's about time France recognized them.
Contemporary African art isn't a recent thing. It's existed since the 60s. Paris had to wait for London to get excited with its own contemporary African art fair in order for Paris to really do things.
Contemporary African art. For me, all these words are just boxes. They're boxes in which we put the artists and also the buyers. We put everyone in these boxes. That's what I've noticed as I've moved through the art world. But I think it's the same in all sectors. Freedom is very limited.
That's all for this edition of Eye on Africa, but don't go away. There's more news and information coming up next, right here on France 24.
I'm here in the Qasr Ouled Sultan in Tunisia, North Africa, with our observer, Omar.
القصور الصحراوية بتطاوين تعتبر آخر الآثار للثقافة البدوية بجنوب تونس. في أماكن أخرى تتعرض هذه الآثار للتدمير والإهمال.
And Omar is trying to save them. It's the next Observers Direct.
The Observers Direct, presented by Derek Thompson on France 24 and France24.com.